podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
The march with Erik's army continues. Manchester United are on a roll. An impressive performance at the Nou Camp on Thursday evening is followed up with a dominant, purring second-half spell that saw the Reds roll over Leicester City for a 3-0 win. 2 goals from Marcus Rashford and another from Jadon Sancho. That'll do. A very warm welcome to the Manchester United Weekly Podcast. I'm Harry Robinson and Jack Tait is with me as always. Today on the show we'll review Sunday afternoon's win, talking Rashford's 2 goals and a record broken, Weghorst's contrasting performance and plenty more. We'll consider how United are still in with a chance in 4 competitions and of course we'll preview Thursday night, Barcelona at Old Trafford. Everything to play for. We'll also talk briefly, and only briefly because there is a long way to go still, about the club's ownership and a potential takeover. In the middle of the show, you'll get your extensive academy and loans update. So let's get going. We could start with Rashford, Jack, but I think let's start with the third goal. We did this a couple of weeks ago. Might even only been a week ago. But I think the third goal, Sancho, says a lot about the team, the quality of the build-up play there. Bruno Fernandes was purring on Sunday, and Sancho and him have a wonderful understanding, whichever one of them is on the right wing and in the centre. And for that to be the goal that wraps it up, United were just playing some brilliant football. It was just entertaining to watch, and that's what you go to games for. That's why you watch at home or at a bar. It's entertainment.
Erik Ten Hag, unprompted, mentioned the relationship that's developing and that's blossoming between Fernandes and Sancho after the game. Yeah, in his interview with United themselves, actually. Yeah, he was just asked about Sancho's performance and immediately mentioned how good the relationship is between those 2 players. And I mean, it kind of makes sense. These are 2 players whose games should complement each other relatively well. You know, Sancho is a very different type of winger to, say, Rashford when he plays out on the left. He's not someone that's going to look to dance past 4 or 5 players. He's someone that is going to kind of link up a lot more heavily with his teammates, maybe more reliant on his teammates, but also probably has more potential to develop those great relationships with players around him. You know, hopefully he can do it with whatever fullback is playing on that side. But with Bruno Fernandes, you can see that the relationship is already going in a really positive direction. It wasn't just the goal. There were plenty of times when the 2 of them combined, but the goal was a beautiful illustration of what they can do together.
The crowning moment.
Yeah, exactly. And again, not just about him and Bruno, but again, in a very, very good performance by Sancho.
And that, to be fair, Sancho's the front line at the moment as overall, and the game against Barcelona and this one, and just the last few weeks really, I think we've seen an advancement in how much I think, or at least for us and for me, I now appreciate the tactical changes of the last few weeks in Ten Hag's ability to drag the most out of players by dropping Weghorst into number 10, by putting Rashford up top and changing that during the game, or swapping the wings and bringing Sancho into that number 10 position and Bruno outright. These are, I think we mentioned it fairly recently as well, that there's so much more value in this team now because each player has kind of 2 or 3 roles that they can play rather than just one. And the whole setup of United seems more flexible. And Sancho and Weghorst in particular, and Luke Shaw, those 3 are the best examples of that. And it's an absolute credit to Ten Hag.
And not only has Ten Hag done a good job at, creating those options for himself, but he uses them very smartly as well. I think one thing that you can definitely say about him is that he picks up and understands kind of the flow of games very quickly. And he really seems to understand which type of player he wants in various roles depending on the state of the game. You know, you saw that against Leeds last week when, playing at Ellen Road, the game was sort of getting away from us a little bit. He switches things around, puts Bruno out wide, Weghorst to number 10, Rashford up front and Garnacho on the left. Today, we started in a very similar kind of format with Bruno out wide, Weghorst at 10. But then he realised that the game state, the flow of the game wasn't suited to that. We needed a little bit more control in the middle of the park. Garnacho wasn't functioning as well as we might want, and Rashford would have been better suited out there. So he's able to change that. Similarly against Barcelona, he realised that Weghorst is going to be needed in that kind of big presence in midfield. So he changes it again. Like, it's not just about having options. It's also about knowing when and how to use them. And I think that is something that Ten Hag deserves a lot of credit for because he has developed those options. Putting Bruno Fernandes out on the right wing. I remember you and I and everyone being massively surprised when he first did that earlier in the season. You know, we were sitting here thinking, you know, what's the logic behind this? But I think now you're starting to see what the idea behind that was, because I think he saw that might be an option that we need further on in the season. Absolutely, yeah. And this is something that we were kind of hoping was going to happen, and just trusting, trusting, depending on the person, it was going to happen, and it has. And yeah, you're definitely right, because Leicester were obviously very good and very threatening early on. We'll mention De Gea in a second. And Ten Hag's halftime substitute changed the game. And afterwards, United should have scored. We scored 2 in the second half. We should have scored at least another 2. It could have been 3 or 4. It was properly just purring, where Old Trafford was cheering every pass for a bit. To do that against an informed Leicester team with a really threatening attack. Their defence is not amazing. A really threatening attack. We weathered the storm. Ten Hag read the game and changed it all. But we should, absolutely. And particularly because of the nature of the occasion. De Gea achieving his 180th clean sheet for United and equalling Peter Schmeichel's record. And there have been occasions he would have deserved to break that record even more. I can think of some at the Emirates in particular, but it was probably apt it came on a day like this, where we've spoken plenty about his distribution and his claiming of crosses, and there was concern at Barcelona on Thursday with that as well. But the 2 saves he pulled off against Leicester is what allowed United to have a performance like that and get through, weather the storm, and come away with a few players rested and a very good win to keep us in, we were going to stay third anyway, but to solidify our place in third and keep us just on the tails of Manchester City and Arsenal. Yeah, De Gea deserves massive credit for keeping us in the game. We didn't start the game, actually the first 5 minutes were brilliant. Actually, Leicester literally barely touched the ball more than once in that first 5 minutes. You could kind of tell that Ten Hag had given them the message, because it's so often in those Sunday games, especially the Sunday 2 after 2 p.m, that is UK kickoff time, after a Thursday night game in the Europa League. We've had those so many times before, haven't we? Where a sluggish start. So you could tell that Ten Hag had just given them a rocket in the dressing room before, and they came out, and then suddenly you kind of noticed the lethargicness come back into the team, and then Leicester kicked on anyway. Carry on. Yeah. For the next 20 minutes, I mean, we barely had to touch the ball. It wasn't quite that bad, but you know, we couldn't really get anything going. Leicester were just winning the ball back so quickly, and the thing that I think that was troubling us most was that, and this is something I've noticed about United in general this season. I spoke about it a little bit when John McKenzie was on the podcast a few weeks ago before the Arsenal game, that even though United's pressing has improved this season, one thing that we're not quite comfortable doing yet, that a lot of elite teams around Europe do really well, is when we are with our attackers trying to put the opposition under pressure. The norm around Europe with the kind of the best teams is that your attackers will push a little bit inside to try and stop the ball being able to progress through to the centre-backs into midfield. And then you sort of jump with one of your full-backs pushing onto the opposition full-back on that side. And it's something United haven't really done. And in the first half, our press was okay, actually, in terms of putting pressure on the centre-backs and the goalkeeper. But too often, it was happening a lot on our left-hand side with Shaw. Shaw wasn't pushing up to put pressure on Castagna. So it was too easy for Leicester to play the out ball onto that side of the pitch. And then we'd be left with Castagna and Tait, kind of a 2-on-1 down that side. Well, the other thing I noticed, all kinds of issues. The other thing I noticed from watching in the ground, and I've seen the goals post-match, but I haven't watched the game or extended highlights properly, but it was blatantly obvious it was coming down that left-hand side, and that's a really interesting point that I don't think I would have picked up on in the ground. But Luke Shaw's position was so obviously central. He was playing, and we have seen this quite a few times over recent weeks, but he was both in and out of possession, United that is. He would be in the centre of the pitch, and because Garnacho's defensive ability is really low at the moment, I think, and that'll come. It's fine, he's 18, but it's something he needs to improve. It just meant that Garnacho's recovery wasn't great, and his ability to prevent that coming down the left wasn't great. And then you have Shaw eventually coming back, and a lot of the time he would recover and would sort it out, but it just felt like he was so far central. What do you think that was? What do you think the aim of that was? And did it change in the second half? Because then United's defence was at the other end, so it's a little bit harder to tell. Well, I think one of the challenges of the kind of inverted fullback role is that in its ideal form, the idea is that you push the fullback inside when you're in possession, to help him build up, but also so that if you lose possession, in kind of transitional moments, more often than not, the ball is going to fall into the centre of the pitch. So you have another player in midfield who's able to kind of collect those balls, start a counter press, hopefully win the ball back quickly. I think the challenge though is if you're in a game where when we do then win the ball back and we're not able to keep it for very long, you're constantly as a fullback kind of in this little bit of a no man's land because we're not in structured enough possession yet to properly play that inverted role and to get the benefits of it. But then when we turn the ball over, which we were doing far too often, Shaw's then kind of out of position because he's sort of moving towards the centre of the pitch to try and play that role, but then he's needed in the left back position in defence. And like you said, ideally you'd have a winger that could sort of cover that a little bit, but Garnacho at 18.
Fred was covering it a bit, but it didn't. Sometimes it was Fred, sometimes it was Garnacho, sometimes it was Shaw that covered. It didn't quite seem there yet.
Yeah, exactly. I think the way that we play around the inverted fullback role is still not quite there. Shaw's very good at it, and in the second half you saw how he plays it very well when we are kind of dominating possession. But in a game where the ball is being turned over quite a lot, especially when we're not winning the ball high up the pitch all the time, it's tough because what he has to do in possession and out of possession in terms of his positioning is so different. So when the ball's getting turned over a lot, he can get caught. It isn't a criticism of Shaw, it's just a challenge of playing that inverted fullback role in general. Yeah. It is tricky to know what to do. If you watch Arsenal, for example, like you mentioned about Fred, it's kind of a great comparison. If you watch Arsenal, they play a very similar thing with Zinchenko is the one that often comes inside. And you'll see Xhaka as kind of that left central midfield, kind of the same role that Fred was playing today. Right. Xhaka, you'll often see Xhaka pull really far wide, both in and out of possession, partially so that he can cover that left back spot if they lose the ball. I think that's just the kind of thing that we haven't quite developed yet as we try and play this kind of style.
I guess the other alternative, and I've seen this before with Casemiro, when Casemiro was playing, is that Martinez shifts out to the left and Casemiro drops into centre back. Interesting.
Yeah, that's more like what Barcelona kind of do. I don't know if you noticed this at the Nou Camp on Thursday. That
I couldn't see a thing. About 2 miles away from the pitch.
Yeah. Like the way they sort of do it, Alba doesn't invert, but Alba goes forward so much, then Gavi inverts. So Alba ends up kind of playing as like a left wing.
Right.
But the way they sort of do it is they shift across. You end up with Marcus Alonso playing as like that left back role, like you mentioned with Martinez, and then the right back, who was Araujo on Thursday, ends up in sort of the right centre back. Whereas United, I don't think we've quite figured out how we want to kind of change our shape when we're in possession yet.
We'll get there soon. The flexibility and quality that Luke Shaw's showing, though, is just, I mean, he's really taken on a position as a proper senior player in this team that is just completely reliable. Now,
there was like a 30-second period in the second half today where he went from left back to like defensive midfielder to central centre back to number 10 in the space of about 30 seconds.
It's, we've looked on jealously at fullbacks doing that for the last 10 years. The recent examples would be Trent Alexander-Arnold and João Cancelo, but Bayern Munich have had players like that in the past. And
Kimmich as well.
Barcelona and
going all the way back.
Yeah, I was thinking Lahm even 10 years ago. And it's lovely to have one of those now. Serious quality. Now, 14 minutes in, we haven't spoken about Marcus Rashford properly. 24 goals for the season, 2 more than his previous season's best, which he equalled at the Nou Camp on Thursday. He's got 14 in the league. He's got 16 goals. I'm throwing out all sorts of stats here, but they're all great. 16 goals in 17 post-World Cup matches. It's just, it's a goal a game, and it's a chance, really. The ball from Bruno is incredible for the first one. Fred's pass for the second is excellent as well. And the kind of thing I've criticised Fred for before, that he's not quite, he's unreliable with that ball to start the counter-attack. And it does hold United back a bit. But for both goals, it's that long time to weigh up the decisions, which we would have spoken about 2 years ago with Rashford. And Rashford 2 years ago, or 1 year ago, or 3, would have, there was a time under Solskjaer where he was scoring those one-on-ones pretty much every time like he is now. But it was a small spell. The rest of the time, he would have let that time get to him, but not now. The glance across at Garnacho for the first goal does the keeper entirely. And then the quality of both finishes it's just, completely clinical. And there was the third, not a third goal, but just a ridiculous bit of play of skill, pace and power that didn't quite get finished off. I think he'd already scored the 2 by then and was just immense. When he's on that left particularly, he's a great option to have up front. But when he's on the left, whoa.
Yeah, I know that bit of play you're talking about where he cuts inside and he ends up shooting like straight at the keeper, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was unbelievably good. Yeah, and I think what I love about watching Rashford at the moment is just, as a fan, I don't think I've ever had as much confidence in a player when he goes through on goal. And that isn't something we've been able to say really about United strikers over the last sort of 5 or 6 years for a lot of the time. And look, I mean, he's playing at an unbelievably good level. I still think his best position is probably off the left, but
yeah, definitely.
Even as a striker, he is offering us so much more than I think we expected him to, playing as a number 9. I think we all expected whenever he does play at number 9 to be in either emergency situations due to injury or maybe to enable us to make a couple of subs. But even in the first half, it's not like he was completely out of the game as a striker. He's improved his game so much. And I think one thing that I've sort of noticed about Rashford, and this is a trait that I've noticed in Mbappe as well, and I know it's something that you've noticed too, Harry, is that obviously when you're running with the ball at your feet, you run slower, obviously, than you do when you're just running because you have to keep control of the ball. But I think what I've noticed in Rashford recently, and it's what we've seen in Mbappe for the last few years, is that I think they've kind of realised how important it is to be able to keep your speed up as much as you can. And actually now, when you see Rashford dribble, he's almost like he's got the ball under his feet and like falling over a lot of the time. Like the dribble for his second goal, like that ball, the finish, he's digging that out from under his feet. But I think it's because there's such an urgency to keep their pace up as much as they can. You're sort of seeing this sort of new way of dribbling with the ball where the closeness of the control, which is maybe what we've seen like more traditional kind of dribblers, isn't maybe as important as just having that dynamic burst and keeping ahead of your defender.
Yeah, that's interesting. We need to move on. Let's do first guess the player clue, and then we'll talk a little bit about Weghorst and then move on properly. First guess the player clue, me setting for you. There'll be 3 throughout the show. The quicker you get it, the better you've done. For you, I'm a current top 10 Premier League player, as in playing for a top 10 side rather than in the top 10 players, but not at Manchester United.
Oh.
I'm a current player for a top 10 Premier League side, but not at Manchester United.
Okay, well,
Bear in mind, all the clues are a former, current, or legend Manchester United player or staff member. Well,
there's 2 in my head straight away, which are Welbeck and Andreas Pereira. Are there any others? Obviously, there's not going to be anyone like City or Arsenal or Liverpool. No one at Chelsea. Yeah. Well, I will come back to that one. But yeah, those are the 2 in my head for now.
Okay, cool. Before Weghorst, Sabitzer and Lindelof both crunching into challenges in that game. Lindelof was really good, I thought. And yeah, he's cleared some good stuff with his head, which is kind of one of his key weaknesses, but just more importantly, some great tackles and recovering for other players. And that allowed Rafael Varane some rest ahead of Thursday, which is great. Sabitzer he's just a really clean player, isn't he? That's a really good late signing in the window. And he's the cleaner in the team. He mops up for other people's mistakes and he's doing really well. Yeah,
I thought today was by far his best performance so far as well. Yeah, he offers us kind of just what we need in that role. He's probably a bit more combative than Eriksen was playing in a similar role, which has ended up helping. Obviously with Casemiro's suspension.
Yeah, and that was the only big weakness with Eriksen is his defensive contributions were really poor.
Yeah.
And he made up for it, absolutely. But he was way too weak in the tackle. And that was.
And it was fine when Casemiro was in the team and playing at his best, because Casemiro could almost do the job of 2 people in one.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I thought Sabitzer did well. I mean, he wins the ball back for our first goal. He's the one that plays it to Fernandes before he plays it through. There's so many other occasions where he's breaking up play. And like you said, he's just clean when he picks it up. There's another really nice ball that I remember right towards the end when Wan-Bissaka came on, kind of picked the ball up in like the right by the halfway line on our right hand side and kind of chipped it through for Wan-Bissaka. Yeah, he's offered us what we needed. He's not, I think, a spectacular player. He's not someone that you're watching and think, oh, we have to sign this guy permanently. But like you said, late on in the window, as sort of a relief signing for Eriksen, he's offered us just what we needed. Yeah,
and he's making a decent bid so far to encourage United to make him a long-term acquisition. Weghorst should have scored. Absolutely. His finishing's really poor at the moment. I think it will probably kick in soon enough, as it happens with a lot of strikers. But his contribution to the team is pretty immense. The work rate and what he gives. We've spoken a lot recently about how, and this obviously didn't happen in the first half, but it did in the second half, about how we've got that ability at the moment to maintain the attack for kind of 3, 4, 5 phases of play, the ball gets cleared, it comes back in. And I think Weghorst is it's not just him who's making that happen, but it's also the positioning of the defence and the speed and the decision making of the people picking up the ball is very good. But there are several occasions in that game against Leicester where United were able to continue the attack because Weghorst runs back to win the ball, or the pressure that he puts people under. It's a whole variety of things, but his contribution is great. His work rate is great. He obviously should have scored. But again, another valuable signing, if not perfect.
Yeah, I find it hard to criticise his performance both today and against Barcelona, to be honest, too much. Like, obviously he should have scored today. He had 2 really good chances, one in particular that definitely should have gone in. But at the end of the day, I also don't think United would have played as well as we had without him in the team. And that is an important consideration here.
The key consideration.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I think he does deserve credit for the work that he's putting in. And I don't just mean, he runs around a lot. Like, he is offering a lot to us in terms of the structure of the team, the way that he's able to start our press defensively, and even in attack as well. He's not the most influential player you've ever seen in terms of, he's not a Bruno Fernandes, but he keeps things ticking. I think I've described him before as a facilitator kind of player. And I think that is how I would describe him. He's come into a team where, despite the fact that he, is quite often, although he hasn't all the time, quite often going to be playing as number 9, he is not ever going to be our main goal threat. And that wasn't really the hope when he came in either. We know that we have other players capable of putting up the number of goals that we need to be a successful team. If he can get somewhere between 5 and 8 goals by the end of the season, I think we'd be more than happy with that. We needed him to come in, be available, firstly, which is more than can be said for, Martial. Yeah. And also...
He's played 10 matches in 1 month and 1 day. That's, vital player.
Yeah. Like, you think about where we would be, and I know this isn't the only way to kind of judge a player, but do you think where we would be and the teams we would have had to put out on the pitch if we hadn't have signed him, or if he hadn't been available, we'd be in a far worse position than we are now.
Yeah, absolutely. I expect he'll start.
Having said that, obviously he does need to score, and today it felt like all the players towards the end were really trying to get him in a position to score, and he should have taken one of those chances. Like you said, I do have faith that it will come, but you also do worry the longer this goes on, the worse his confidence is going to get. Nipping that in the bud very soon will be a big deal. Yeah.
Kobbie Mainoo, great for him to get some minutes. Premier League debut, very well deserved. He's worked hard for that and did well. I think he's holding back, and that's not a problem, but he'll get there. What you're seeing from Kobbie Mainoo is tidy stuff, isn't it? And there's kind of a hint of that amazing technical ball control. But he's holding back, and hopefully we'll see it fairly soon.
He seemed, even in he's only on the pitch, 10 or 12 minutes, something like that today. I felt like even in that short little time, he seemed to grow into the game a bit. The first 5 minutes, he wasn't involved too much, but then after that, there were a couple of really nice touches on the ball. One in particular where he picked it up in his own half, turned out to the right and played a good ball into short. There were some signs towards the end, but like I said, it's just going to take time for him to kind of grow in confidence playing in the first team.
Absolutely. United have won more games than any other team across the big 5 European leagues this season. We've probably played twice as many games as anyone else in the world. But, that is a...
we're the only team left in 4 competitions, aren't we, I think, around Europe?
Is that right? Sure.
I think so. Well, because most countries don't even have 4, do they? They just have...
I was just thinking,
one cup competition.
I was just thinking Barcelona, but they might count the Super Cup as one, but that's over anyway. And it's not really comparable. But yeah. 4 games in 4 different tournaments in the next 10 days is crazy, relentless, but it's brilliant. It's what we wanted, and also you're confident going into all of them.
Yeah.
Including the one that's about to come up, which we'll talk about next after, well, not exactly next. We'll have an academy and loans roundup and a bit of chat on the ownership before we talk about Barcelona. But before all of that, guess the player clue 2. As a reminder, the first guess the player clue was, I'm a current top 10 Premier League player, but not at Manchester United. Your second clue is, I'm eligible for 2 countries, 1 South American and 1 European.
Okay, well, I had Welbeck and Pereira in my head. I've been trying to wrap my brains at anyone else. I'm sure there are some that I'm missing, but they're the two that I'm still kind of stuck on. I think I've got to guess Pereira and hope that he's eligible for either Spain or Portugal, as well as Brazil. So I'll go Andreas Pereira.
You're correct, but wrong in your in your method. He's eligible for Belgium because that's where he was born.
Oh, really? I
think he played for their. Yeah, I think he played for their youth teams.
Well, I did not know that.
At least one of them. Yeah. Danny Welbeck is eligible for, both of them were eligible for two countries because, of course, both of them have played for their countries. Pereira for Brazil and Welbeck for England. Welbeck was eligible for Ghana, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. If you hadn't have said the South American one,
I shouldn't have done.
Then I think I probably would have guessed Welbeck, to be honest, because I knew that he was eligible for Ghana.
Yeah, I remember him playing for England, being booed by Ghana at Wembley in like early 2010s, I would guess it would be, because they were very angry.
Are there any other United players that I missed there that play for other top 10 teams? I was really struggling to think.
To be honest, I didn't work it out. I can't think of any others off the top of my head. I'm
sure there might be some academy players or something.
Yeah, but even in the rest of the league, I can't think of loads. Jack Harrison at Leeds is one who played briefly for United. There'll be a couple at Everton, like Michael Keane, and I think most of them will be bottom 10
James
teams.
Garner now.
Yeah. I'm sure there are others.
Why? Because I knew there wouldn't be any in the. Well, I guess technically Martin Dubravka.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. Anyway, let's move on. We're going to have a Patreon Q&A first, which we've got a couple of... a really interesting question from Corey Lennox, actually, who says, what a week. If you had to choose, win one, lose one, what would you decide for the upcoming matches this week? Obviously, we need a trophy.
Oh, good question.
But this Barcelona tie feels like a lot more than a Europa League qualifier. Thursday had the feel of a Champions League semi-final. I was posed this question at the pub watching the match today and couldn't decide. What do you say, boys? Well, we'll answer that in our Patreon Q&A next.
Football Social Daily.
This week on Football Social Daily, we've been speaking to former Everton and England man Trevor Steven. And Trevor was on the pitch the day a certain Argentinian produced an iconic moment in the beautiful game.
Maradona then continues to make the run and the ball's up in the air. I see Shilton adamant that he punched it, didn't he? He punched it. Edward going, yeah, he punched the ball in.
You can hear Trevor's tales about the magnificent Maradona and a load more on Football Social Daily, available now wherever you get your podcasts.
Football Social Daily, the Premier League podcast.
Okay, back from the Patreon Q&A. Very interesting question from Corey there. Let's have start with the academy. Under 18s, a 4-0 defeat to Forest at the weekend. Some poor defensive mistakes. Incredibly young United team, possibly one of the youngest ever. I don't know that, but it will be up there. 4 under 16s and 4 under 15s in the squad. I mean, not much more to say than it will be a useful learning opportunity. But yeah, not a great day. But given the youth of the ages of the players in the team and in the squad, it genuinely will be useful. You learn a lot from losing at that age, and that's kind of what under 18s football is for. The under 21s play Monday afternoon at 1 p.m. against Crystal Palace away from home, and the under 19s, or kind of a collection of various ages from the professional development phase, which is under 17 up to 21, played against Barcelona on Thursday at Ciutat Esportiva, their training ground, behind closed doors. Louis Jackson captained the team. It was 1-1 at half-time, and then 2 quick-fire goals in the second half from Barcelona gave them a 3-1 win. Really good that they got that, because not being in the Champions League this season means United weren't in the UEFA Youth League. They did get some international experience, which was great in the Premier League International Cup against... let me draw this out from the back of my head. Feyenoord, Sparta, Prague, PSV Eindhoven and Monaco. I think it was. I might have got one of those wrong. I might not have played PSV, but I think it was those 4. Anyway, yeah, they were good experiences. It's just, this is a problem that when I've spoken to the head of academy, Nick Cox, before, he's spoken about that. Because of the way the English system works, you basically, until the age of 18, really, until you go into the under 21s, you only play kind of local players. United obviously do go on international tournaments, but they're often like 5-a-side tournaments for 2 days or something in like the Mercedes-Benz Cup in Germany or whatever. But you just play from players kind of City and Liverpool all the time when you're youngsters, and then it widens a bit to the north, and then it widens further to Premier League 2 with the full country. But you're constantly playing against players that you've played since you were 8 or 9. Suddenly getting thrown against one of the best youth teams in Europe in Barcelona is a massive development opportunity, and it's really good they did that. Jack, what's leading the loan news? Is it Maxi Oyedele?
I think it's got to be with his first senior goal for Altrincham. I mean, this sort of innovative loan system that United have got going for Maxi Oyedele at Altrincham and Sonny Al-Joffrey as well, isn't it? Out at Altrincham, where they're still training.
And Joe Hugo, yeah.
And Joe Hugo too. So still training with United, playing for Altrincham. I mean, it's got to be great that United can still have some kind of control and, playing at a low level of football, despite how good it is to get the experience. You can definitely see how young players would maybe develop some slightly bad habits, I guess. So it's a really good opportunity for them to get some experience playing senior football, but still for United coaches to be able to have a lot of time with them. I mean, yeah, just a great moment for Maxi Oyedele.
Yeah, he's a talented midfielder. He was kind of overshadowed by Dan Gore and Kobbie Mainoo, and he's at Cantona a bit in the FA Youth Cup winning team. He did score in the first round against Scunthorpe, and he played in every game, but off and off the bench. He's got proper good physique. He plays for Poland under 19s, and he played really well in the Youth Cup defeat to Stoke City, and he played really well away at Crystal Palace in the third round. United obviously out of the Youth Cup now, went out to Stoke, but Oyedele was probably United's best player on the night. He's great physicality, really manages to hold onto the ball really well when he's being shoved off it, and good pass, decent long shot on him. Yeah, gets into the area late on to get some tap-ins. He's got some quality. We'll see how he does there. What else? Yeah,
let's whiz through the rest of it. So Ahmad played another 90 minutes for Sunderland. They drew 1-1 with Bristol City. No goals or assists for Ahmad this time around, but it was another strong performance. He almost had one really good goal after he went through about 3 or 4 Bristol City defenders, but Sunderland continue to rise up the table. They're now 5th and just behind Michael Carrick's Middlesbrough, who are now in 3rd after a big lead for them. Ethan Laird, a little bit of a worrying one for Ethan Laird. He had a hamstring injury, you might remember, about a month ago. Wasn't too severe, but he pulled up in midweek playing against Sunderland. He was then taken off and was left out of the squad against Middlesbrough this weekend. Hopefully it's nothing to worry about, but just a little concerning since it's the same injury. You've got to hope it's not a recurring problem for Laird. Hannibal played 81 minutes for Birmingham. He played okay. He's had a really impressive run of form recently, but Birmingham were beaten by Huddersfield 2-1. Also in the Championship, the other United loanee playing in the Championship, Alvaro Fernandez, have been mentioning that he kind of lost his starting spot to Robbie Brady. He got it back this week. He played the full 90 minutes for Preston in a 0-0 draw with Hull, but hopefully a good sign for him. We were sort of getting a bit worried that he might see really limited minutes for the rest of the season, but he did play the full 90 minutes and hopefully can at least get sort of half the games for the rest of the season, rotating with Brady at left wing back for Preston. Then going further down, Charlie Savage finally made his first couple of appearances for Forest Green. He came off the bench in midweek against Charlton for his debut, and then he started after an impressive cameo against Ipswich. Forest Green are really, really struggling though. It's going to be a pretty tough situation for Savage. They lost 1-0 to Charlton in midweek and then 4-0 to Ipswich at the weekend. They're still fighting relegation in League One.
In fairness, Ipswich are a very good team under Kieran McKenna, and they're 3rd in the league.
Yeah, just a tough one. It's probably going to be a proper survival scrap, I think, for them down there. And then finally, Charlie McNeil.
He can ask his dad how to cope with that.
And then finally, Charlie McNeil came off the bench twice this week for Newport. He did start a couple of weeks ago, as we mentioned. He wasn't given the start in either of the 2 games this week, but he came off the bench in both games. Hopefully, he continues to get some good minutes and some good experience down at Newport. Deshaun
Bernard played for Portsmouth in a couple of games, and I'm pretty sure Will Fish, he's easily forgotten up in Scotland, but I'm pretty sure he scored another goal, which it kind of isn't his job as a defender, but is good for him because he wasn't in the team for a long time up there and now is, and clearly doing pretty well. So that's good. You guessed the player in Andres Pereira. The final clue would have been, just for transparency or any interest, was I won Manchester United's goal of the season in the 2018-19 season.
Oh, the goal against Southampton.
Yeah, it was a great goal. Yeah, he scored some absolute crackers for United. And it's great that he's doing so well.
Yeah, he is. I'm really pleased with him. He's like such a mainstay in their team too.
Yeah.
Funny enough, did Welbeck's debut goal win goal of the season that season as well? I know that was a long time ago. Was that the same? No,
I don't know, but you'd have to think so.
Yeah,
the one against Portsmouth, the one he absolutely belted from 40 yards.
That wasn't the same season as the Rooney bicycle kick, though, was it?
No, it was in the 2008 or 2009. No, it was before. Rooney was 20.
That long ago? Well,
because it was in the kit we won the Champions League in. I can't remember whether it was 2008 or 2009, but
wow.
Yeah, he took a while to come through because he went on. I think he scored that and then went on loan at Sunderland. I can't exactly remember that. Someone else will know. Yeah, the timeline gets messed up in my head. Let's talk about the ownership. Not for long, as I say, because it's fair enough that lots of people are talking about it, and I would recommend following certain people like Miguel Delaney and Sporting Intelligence. Nick Harris from the Mail on Sunday is a great one to follow. Tariq Panja from the New York Times has his good moments and his bad moments, but is good on issues of ownership like this. There's plenty of others. Adam Crafton of The Athletic is a really good one to follow. So those people will do what they do and have done for Newcastle and Manchester City, and they will do their jobs. And I will certainly be supporting them in doing that because it's absolutely essential. But there is a long way to go. This is kind of a very soft deadline, and there's plenty more to do. So I think there'll be so much more time to talk about this in the future, and especially when it actually happens. But what I would say is it's depressing, and I thought this with Newcastle as well. And I am very disappointed in a lot of their fan base for the way they've reacted to being taken over by Saudi Arabia. There are others who have done good things. But it is depressing that football fans have been left in a position where they don't need to, but they're kind of expected to have a view on geopolitics in order to support their club. And that is a neglect of duty from football's institutions, the FA, the Premier League, but also governments as well. But I think what fans can do is make demands. And I think this is my key point before we get on to anything specific is whoever it is, United fans should not be celebrating any potential owner because neither of them, out of the two that we're very aware of, but also the rest, have shown what we should be getting. We should demand transparency of funds, of plans and everything else. And we should demand commitments to the supporters, to the women's team, to the academy and so on. But we shouldn't be celebrating any potential owner because United is an institution that can stand on its own 2 feet. It doesn't need to be an extension of a state's foreign policy or a plaything for a billionaire, no matter who they are or what your opinion are on them. And my final point is, yes, nation states have bought much of Britain's industries and buildings, and that's the point that many are making at RE Qatar. But the point is football should be different. These are historic community institutions that have to be protected. And Manchester United has been at the heart of the Manchester community and the global community. The Manchester community for 120, 130 years and the global community for 40, 50, 60, 70 years. And for both reasons, it should be protected more than a building in London or a bank.
Yeah, I think something that I sort of struggle with and I think is a bit depressing about this whole thing is just the amount of money that it takes to buy a football club like Manchester United. It means that even in quote unquote the good guys, like someone like a Jim Ratcliffe, there is still so many things you could say to criticise someone like, because just having that much money necessitates a certain amount of exploitation and just things that maybe we aren't comfortable with. But like you said, I think
in not necessarily exploitation of people, but possibly of land or resources or
there's no sort of great way to come across £5 billion, which is what it might take to buy this football club. But I think the point that you
win
made
the lottery in Qatar several times, as Xavi did twice.
I think the point that you made is the pertinent one here is that there's no point us sort of sitting here and talking through all the possible good and bad parts about each prospective owner, because we just don't know enough yet. But I think the big thing is owners ultimately are just custodians. They are just people that are going to sit there and be part of a football club, but it is not them that we support. It's the football club. This isn't the Glazers Man United. This is the fans Man United. And whether the fans in writing own this
we
club,
should know that more than anyone else. We've supported a team with owners we hate for 17 years.
Yeah, exactly. And that has to remain the focus. Like you said, Manchester United is bigger than any one person, any consortium, any family, or even any country if it was to go down that route. And I think regardless of who it is that ends up coming out of this as the owner of Man United, that is what we have to remember. And I think for me, the big thing is you don't want Man United to be used for a different game. You want Man United to be run for its own benefit and to make Man United the best football club in the world. Yeah. Not to benefit or deliver on some third party purpose.
And crucially, the best football club in the world does not mean winning everything. I think this is a key thing. When I visited Athletic Club in Bilbao, after a couple of days after we watched the game in San Sebastian against Real Sociedad, Bilbao's policy is famous of developing their own players and only players with links to the Basque country in which Bilbao is can play for their team, whether that's growing up in the area or a grandparent sometimes would be the loosest kind of connection. And the pride that their supporters are able to have in their club is, I think, greater than the pride that I will have in United. And that's saying something ever, because it's so. I think this often gets lost in kind of the best football club. It's not the most successful ones. It's the one where you can properly have real pride in what they're doing on and off the pitch. Anyway, we will talk much more about this, I'm sure. But let's go back to the football for now. I've just checked, by the way, Danny Welbeck's debut goal was before he went on loan to Sunderland, and it was in 2008. Barcelona. It was a wonderful trip away, and it was a proper privilege watching that game in the Nou Camp. It is just an incredible stadium. It's got some serious faults with it in the same way that Old Trafford does, and the away end is just miles away. But when you look over, the benefit of being that high up is you can see almost the entire city of Barcelona from your seat, as well as just the most iconic stadium. And I'm delighted I got to visit. I had been before, but I missed the game in 2019. And I was very happy I could go again now, just before Barcelona renovate the Nou Camp and add a roof and all sorts of other things, because it won't be quite the same. And I'd urge you, if you're able to visit these great stadiums before they're taken down, such as, or renovated, such as the Nou Camp and the San Siro. But yeah, it was a great trip and a great game. It's God, it's going to be tense on Thursday, isn't it?
Massively. And I think we sort of all have this like collective memory of what it's like facing a Spanish team in Europe if you go behind.
Yeah.
It is just the most awful experience. I think playing against that, happening against Atletico last year is sort of the perfect example. If we concede the first goal, it is going to be one hell of an awful remainder of the game whenever that comes. So I think the key for United is obviously keep things tight. I expect us to approach the game similarly to how we did. We do have a couple of advantages in that Gavi is suspended after picking up a yellow card. Looks like Ousmane Dembele will still be out. Pedri could be injured after picking up a little knock and having to come off in the first game. There are definitely positives for United, and I think there are reasons to be optimistic, but this is still a very, very good Barcelona team.
But I'm confident. I'm not like I don't expect us to go through and destroy Barcelona, but I am confident, and that's saying a lot.
Yeah. And you come out of the first game feeling a lot more confident than I thought I would be.
Yeah.
Going into the tie, I'm way more confident now, which I think speaks volumes about how well we played and also how fragile we made Barcelona look at times.
Yeah, and to be able to bring Martinez back into the team and have that defensive quality, but also quality on the ball, will be big. Casemiro
and have Casemiro and Varane well rested.
Oh, we've got some good players, haven't we? It is. Yeah.
Actually, I was going to make this point in the main episode too about sort of Ten Hag's rotation. We've obviously spoken a lot that he hasn't rotated very much, and that still has been true. But you've definitely seen in the last few weeks, there's sort of players here and there that have been taken out of the team. Martinez and Varane were rested at Leeds last week. Varane today. There have been games on occasion where, the individual player here or there has been kind of taken out, and it is seemingly helping.
Yeah, I think it's clear. It's kind of clear who he's targeting for rest.
Yeah.
Varane particularly. That's been, so far, has been very well managed. He obviously did get the injury.
And completely understandable.
Yeah, he got the injury at the end of October, he's recovered from that. And if you can manage that and have him when you really need him, that's really important. It's a shame not to have Anthony for this game because he does give us something else. But Sancho, fantastic. Yeah. Rashford, fantastic. Bruno, I mean, you think... Do you expect Sancho to start and Fernandes be at number 10, or do you think it will be a similar setup to at the Nou Camp? I think that's probably his front four, and then it gives so much flexibility because all four...
You mean with Weghorst at number 10, you would start there?
Yeah. I think he'll start. I think he'll start those four players in attack. In what order? Absolutely no idea. I would expect, yeah. But that's the great thing about it, is it means you can adapt to what's in front of you. I think midfield's going to be the key area we can really emphasise our quality, because Gavi and Pedri are going to miss the games. It's not clear yet whether Busquets is going to be back from injury for that. They've got good backup midfielders of the kind of quality of Fred and Sabitzer, players like Franck Kessié, Sergio Roberto. So that's where, if you can dominate midfield with Casemiro and Sabitzer, and that's one of the keys. Sabitzer was suspended for the Nou Camp. Casemiro has been suspended for the Premier League. We haven't seen those two players play together. Yeah. And you would think that's going to be a really harmonious partnership. So I think he'll probably go with that and drop Fred. There's also you want Martinez back in, but Malacia is just a fighter, isn't he? He had a great performance at the Nou Camp.
Yeah, he really is.
I'm continually warming to him. Yeah. Great signing him.
Remember we talked a few weeks ago, this might have been in the Patreon Q&A actually, we talked about the new sort of structure at United the new structure at United in charge of dealing with transfers, and we said, we've signed good players that have worked out well, but they weren't necessarily good signings because we overpaid for a lot of them and the process wasn't good. Malacia, I think you could say, is a good signing.
Yeah, but
£12 million for a player like him, like he's offered us so much this season.
I fully agree.
Like a breath of fresh air.
I think the point you're referring to, and I think it was in the Patreon Q&A for non-patrons, the point was that United have signed good players, but they have either been obvious signings, too expensive or too late, or they've been so clearly linked to the manager. And Malacia falls into that latter bracket. So I agree.
Yeah, so I wasn't saying that to give credit to like the structure. I meant more just that like this is an example of someone you say is a good signing.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
The actual deal was great. Yeah. It wasn't a very obvious play. It was always going to be good. And we paid 50 million for him. £12 million for everything that he's brought this season is looking better and better by the game.
Yeah. Barcelona in the League Cup final. What a week. What's your...
And Anfield next weekend as well.
I know. Wow.
This really does feel like a very, like a massive knife edge of a 10 days, like win all 4 of these next games and you've gone, win the League Cup, last 16 of the Europa League, would beating West Ham gets to the quarter-final of the FA Cup.
Which is a very open draw as well. I'm literally I'm biting my nails now as you're speaking. The tension is already... It's Sunday evening. We've just beaten Leicester 3-0 at home. It's 4 days till Barcelona and I'm already nervous. But that's what you want. This is the excitement you get. We will be back after the Barcelona game on Friday morning or Friday afternoon in some form, reacting to whatever happens and previewing the League Cup final against Newcastle. But until then, for Jack's thoughts, you can find him on Twitter at
UTD Tait, Tait.
And you can find me at Harry Robinson 64 and the podcast itself at UTD Weekly Pod, POD at the end there. If you've enjoyed the show, please leave us a review on wherever you can, or share the podcast with your mates in your WhatsApp group or on Twitter or wherever. It was, any of those things will help us. Or if you want to become a patron and help support for as little as £1.50 a month, you know where to find information on how to do that, and that is massively appreciated as well. So thank you to our patrons as always, and thank you for listening. Have a great week. Enjoy what has the potential to be something really, really special. Goodbye.
Sports Social Podcast Network.